Well, hello everyone to Digital Crafters. I'm your host, Fernando Garcia. In this episode, I'm interviewing Nick Reese. He's a creator of Elder.js, which is a static site generator. And we actually work together on elderguy.com and a few other projects. And so I wanted to interview him because I think that he's a really awesome person. I've learned a lot from him, and I continue to do so. And for that reason, I tried to do a different approach to this episode. So I decided to record the call after just chatting, him and I, without intending to put that on the podcast. But that turned out to be bad on my end because I was like everywhere. My mind was very scattered and I wasn't making a lot of sense. So the podcast is not very organized. It's not very structured. So I apologize for that in advance. But in any case, I did try to remove all my mumbling. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this episode and keep in tune for the next one because I already have one next up.
Well, thanks so much for having me on the podcast. I'm excited.
Yeah, no, thank you for being here. Just to give a little bit of context, because we were having a conversation about side projects and basically the main subject of this podcast. And I think something that's kind of popular now is that everyone wants to do their own thing and make a living out of their own thing. And I kind of see the future of the world and jobs going that direction. I don't know how to jump into the conversation we were having and getting it here again.
Yep. Maybe I can share some background that that maybe the listeners don't know, and then we can kind of talk about kind of transitions into doing your own thing and what that looks like. So my background is in internet marketing, but it wasn't always that way. I was once wet behind the ears, so to speak, or new aspiring entrepreneur. And I just something I had said right before this call is that, you should fail as many times as possible before 30. And that was some advice my first mentor gave me. And I've tried to live with that as much as possible. I have probably 2 times as many failed businesses as I do successful businesses in the past. One was a t-shirt company. The second one, I had a t-shirt company that I ended up getting sued by my college I got a cease and desist from my college for making t-shirts about my college. And I was a broke college student and brought the cease and desist letter to the student legal services at the college. They're like, well, we can't help you because we're suing you on this, which was funny. But shortly after that, I ended up working at a decent sized real estate firm in Florida. They were one of the largest branches of Sotheby's. And I was brought in to automate all their marketing. And I was just this college student. I was paid like $12, $13 an hour, whatever it was. And I just did a really good job. I focused on automating everything I could. I built systems. I ended up replacing multiple people. I didn't realize they had a little bit of a mutiny before I came, and I replaced multiple people and kind of automated all their jobs. And during that time, I really found email marketing to be really not streamlined. And we were paying another company in order to do it. And I said, well, why don't we just do this in-house? We could probably do this in-house. And my boss told me, well, that's the way it's always been. So we're going to continue doing that. Well, that's probably the least useful amount of information that you can give me, is that this is the way it's always been. I've always been rebellious. And so I went home and figured out how to do it on my own. And I came in and said, hey, here's this idea I invented at home. Let's do it. And ended up having to have the president of the company sign off on it. I just went right past my boss because I knew she wouldn't approve it. And so I had FaceTime with the president of the company, and he was happy with what I invented. Basically, what I did, because I'm assuming this audience is a little bit techie, I embedded an animated GIF in an email. So basically, what this company did is they sent out email marketing newsletters to people that were interested in buying homes, but they were these tiny little photos that were in old 2006 emails. And what I said is, well, animated GIFs aren't that fancy. We can just embed, make these animated GIFs that browse through the images. And it was revolutionary. Everyone was all over the moon about that. So I didn't think much of it. My mom was like, man, you really shouldn't just be giving this to the company. And I was like, well, it's done. It's done. And so I plan on going back to college. I trained my replacement, went back to college, and that replacement quit. And so they called me back and said, hey, could you like come in and like just help us? Like we'll triple your pay for a week. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. I was just like not even thinking about the opportunity. And then it turns out the person that they tried to hire to have me train during that week didn't show up either. And so it's kind of left in this situation where they needed what I did because they become so well known for those animated email property tour things we called them e-blasts. That the president of the company was kind of like, man, it's a shame that you have to go back to college and whatnot. And so I told my mom that, and she's like, hey, why don't you like make a PowerPoint presentation and pitch the CEO of the company on like hiring you as a consultant. I was like, Mom, how much do I charge? And she's like, I don't know. Like just pitch him on something. My mom is in business, but she didn't know that much about how to price stuff. And at the time I had no idea either. So I knew that he got into the office early, but I knew that he was really into basketball. There was a basketball game on late at night, the night before. So I watched the basketball game. So I had something to talk about with him, and posted up outside the office at like 5 a.m. and waited until he walked into the office, and didn't really ambush him, but looking back, it probably looks like an ambush. And so he walked into the office and I was like, hey, I'm here early and I wanted to show you something and just like talk with you. And I basically convinced him that tell me what you can pay for these e-blasts as long as you'll also mentor me. And that was my deal to him. And he told me, go back to college, come up with a monthly budget, and we'll pay you whatever your monthly budget is in order to do the e-blasts. And very quickly, I had my first consulting business, and he represented like 150 agents. And then within 2.5, 3 years, I had 450 agents that I was working with doing this email marketing. And it scaled quite well. And I had like my first like real mentorship. So as far as like making a leap from like doing freelancing to your own thing, that's where like now I feel like we have enough context to actually talk about it, right? So like I have this really successful freelancing gig, and it's really productized consulting when you think about it, because it was to the point where I had a product that I offered, and I did consulting on it essentially. And I think there's several phases. The easiest way to like transition to doing your own thing is to start with freelancing, then figure out productized consulting, like something that you can do better than no one else can, and that you create a product around it. And instead of like having to commit so many hours, you have like this like packaged product that you resell. So like a lot of people think about attorneys as freelancers, but in reality, they're actually doing productized consulting because they generally have their contracts already figured out. And so like if you need an operating agreement, it's not like they're writing an entire operating agreement. They already have the operating agreement written. They might spend 2 hours, but they're going to bill you 7 hours to do it, right? And so that's productized consulting. So if you can move from freelancing to productized consulting to doing your own thing and like making a business out of it, that's repeatable, that you don't necessarily have to be in every single moment, every time you're delivering the service. I think that's the most straightforward way. For me, I had this successful email marketing business running, and I stumbled across this thing called affiliate marketing. And through a friend of a friend, not even really a friend of a friend, I had to interface with this company that built the websites of the companies that I worked with to get the images. Because my dad helped me automate it. He's a programmer, and he helped me like scrape the photos from the websites. Because one of the biggest bottlenecks we had was having realtors upload photos of their properties. Well, if it's on a website, we'll just scrape it and build that animated GIF e-blasts that way. And so I had to interface with this company, and I got lunch with the CEO of that company. He's like, yeah, we're really kind of like distracted right now because we found this thing called affiliate marketing, and we're making like, $300 a day. And it's like paying better than any clients are. And we don't actually have any like clients. Like, it's pretty awesome. I'm like, tell me more. And he's like, I can't really tell you anything else. I was like, are you kidding me? This is like a secret. And so he's like, oh, just study SEO, PHP, and WordPress. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I'll just go learn all of that while I'm running this business. Well, that's actually what I did. And so I kind of researched it, and I ended up building an affiliate website. That was based, this was 2006, that was based around a fish that's notoriously hard to take care of. And there was an ebook that was written about how to take care of this fish. And I became the largest affiliate for that ebook. I made like $300 a month. It's called arowanacare.com. And the author, which is kind of famous in Asia at the time for taking care of these fish, he was on arowana-care.com. And so I had a little story about how my arowana was sick, and it was like super low credibility because it wasn't true. I wouldn't do that today. But I cut a corner starting out and it worked, and I got a taste of affiliate marketing, and I was like, okay, this is interesting, because now I'm making $300 a month, and that's like this many clients I don't have to have my productized consulting. So I started neglecting my consulting business, and I just focused on building affiliate sites. And kind of like some context, my dad was a programmer, and his business, he was a business partner in autoloans.com in 1999. He built the entire autoloans.com website, and the business partner, the main owner of the company, screwed him out of all of his equity. And that just recently happened. And I basically told my dad, I'm like, well, why don't we build a competitor to him? Like, what's stopping us, right? He's got a good domain name, but like, I know this SEO stuff. We can figure this stuff out. And I didn't know anything about SEO. Like, I was willing to take a risk. It was an asymmetric bet. Like, I could invest time. I'm going to learn a bunch of skills, and I'm going to this could be very successful if we do it. And so we came up with a plan, and we had a hard time finding places to buy our leads at the time. It wasn't like a really developed affiliate market. But finally, we had a breakthrough on a company that we had like a marketplace. It's called Detroit Trading, and set up an agreement with them, got terrible payouts for leads. And now we had to figure out how to actually get traffic. Well, at the time, this was 2007, and Google had just introduced maps into their results. And I was like, okay, here's our opportunity. Because it looks like every time you do a search, it picks the closest items to the center point of what Google thinks is the city. So we did is we registered business names in 50 cities in the United States. Well, we started with 10, but it ultimately became 50 cities. We got PO boxes closest to the center as we could, or UPS boxes, because you could actually use their address then with a suite number. And we set up like doing business ads and all that stuff, phone numbers in all these cities, and we put up websites. So it was like, it would be like Tampa Car Finance Autoloan.com was our website. Was one of them. And we had like a ton of these, right? So we had 50 of them. And it turned out that we quickly turned that into, within just a couple months, we were at like close to $10,000 a month in affiliate commissions, doing auto loans, and kind of evolved from there. And kind of the biggest lesson I found is that, you have consulting where you're like trading your time for money. Then you have productized consulting where you're trading your time for your expertise and prepackaged services. And then you have this other thing, which is affiliate marketing, which is kind of like the best of everything. Like, you don't have customers, you have like a goal. And so affiliate marketing is a little weird, but I think there is another sort of business where it's productized consulting, where you're not actually, you're offering a service. So you have a SaaS business or something like that that runs. So there's many different ways to slice it. Affiliate marketing has always kind of been my thing, because it requires understanding of SEO. And a lot of people think SEO has a whole bunch of woo-woo in it. And in reality, it's just doing cool shit and telling people about it and making sure your markup's right. Like, that's my philosophy. And that's worked pretty well. So I know I've just kind of went on like a huge ramble, but hopefully that gives some context for having the rest of this conversation on kind of what it means to transition to like what different types of work will look like in the future, and how do you transition from freelance to doing your own thing. And I would actually argue that freelancing is kind of doing your own thing.
Yeah,
it's just you have the problem of marketing, right? Like, every business has the problem of marketing, and that's the reason why I actually like affiliate marketing. Is no business is going to turn you down if you say, hey, I have a ton of leads, I'll sell you. Like, most businesses, their problem is that they can't figure out how to get more customers, or they don't have a repeatable system for getting more customers. And I find that with search traffic, and whether that be PPC or SEO traffic, you can have a repeatable system for getting more customers. And so, it's a fascinating space.
Yeah, for sure. The project that I shared with you, where we show the political parties on the election dates here in Mexico, we were thinking about like how to take it to the next level and actually provide that like service, we call it, to like every part of Mexico. I thought of SEO as a tool to actually get there, because what we thought is like, there's just a bunch of like frequently asked questions about politics in Mexico that don't really get answered, because like I can literally just type, when will the winners of the elections get into the office, and there's just no clear answer. Like, if you Google that, there's not an answer. Like, and that's just insane to me. Like, it's just like such a basic question. And there's a bunch of questions like that don't have a a simple answer that appears on top, because the government sites that have that information are just horrible for SEO. Like a lot of text within those sites are inside images, like low res images. So, and yeah, like it's just insane, right? So yeah, I kind of like saw that opportunity, like as a way to grow the project and like get it to more people around Mexico, because having a site with a lot of traffic, I mean, just for this city, it generated quite a lot of traffic. For like, it was more than we expected. And because we didn't expect more, we didn't really optimize for like bandwidth. So it like consumed like what Netlify gives you like for a month, like it consumed like half of that in just like 3 days. And we were like, oh, like we didn't think that was going to happen. So like that got us thinking like, okay, if we really want to do this like on a large scale, we're gonna need money to just like fund this, like hosting and like bandwidth. And
who pays is my question. Yeah, that's a big question. It's my mind's at is like, who pays? Does the government pay for that? Like, because it sounds like a government service that you're offering, but
we don't really want to make it like that. Like we don't like we don't want to depend on the government, because that would suck. Like, yeah,
you get corporate sponsorships or something. Part of the problem is anytime you introduce money, you have these stakeholders that are interested and steering. Exactly. And it's much harder to essentially set that up. I wonder if you could crowdfund it.
Yeah, we were thinking about a bunch of ideas, and I also wanted to talk about more in detail about like crowdfunding options nowadays. But for this project, I think since like right now we don't need that much money to have the project, right? So we thought like, okay, so like Vercel, which is a Netlify's competitor, has some sponsorship for open source projects and like nonprofits. And I haven't looked, like they have a page where they have info, but I haven't sent an email yet to like ask for the details about that.
Well, and see if we could apply for that. Mention Cloudflare's Athena project, because Cloudflare has Athena, which is like protecting the integrity of elections, and like they promise to keep up politician websites. And they have like an entire like thing on it, and you could probably reach out to Cloudflare. So I would play Cloudflare versus Vercel. Just say, hey, I sent an email to Cloudflare about the Athena project. Want to know if Vercel offers something similar, and here's what we're doing. And it could be a cool story for you, because we're interested in bringing more transparency to the election process in Mexico.
Okay, yeah, that sounds great.
Exactly the email I would write.
Okay. Yeah, so that covers like a lot of the the budget that or the money that the project needs to live, right? I mean, like expecting high traffic, which would only be during the election time. Or at least that's what we expect.
And right? If you statically generate it with Elder.js, you're going to be paying a lot less too.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotta plug it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So like, actually, maybe we could just like make a parenthesis about that. So you created Elder.js. Just my understanding is that you were very frustrated by the tools in WordPress and for creating like just good SEO sites. So I don't know, can you tell us a little bit about that?
All the sites I build are like generally between 5 and 50,000 pages, right? So I'm not building like little sites. And when you're dealing with that, like, and you're trying to do it in WordPress, you have to programmatically generate all these WordPress posts or pages or whatever you want to put them in as. And then when it comes to editing them, you just have this nightmare of having to go through and edit it. And so I just generally was looking for a better way, and I fell into static site generators. I found out about Gatsby back in 2018, and it was cool, but it had a ton of SEO problems, and migrated a business site to it, and it like fell on its face because of Gatsby's problems. So I got really burned by Gatsby and didn't want to go back to that. And so I wanted to build a site in the senior care community to help seniors make informed decisions about like what nursing homes and residential facilities are in their areas, and along with all the government data that underpins that. And Yeah, it's I tried to build that in Svelte with Sapper, which it was just too slow. I tried Next. I tried several others, and there was one that was pretty promising called Hydrogen. So there wasn't a very developed out idea. The core idea was like you used like JavaScript template literals in order to write your own templates, and it was just basically string concatenation. It was cool, but I ended up developing elderguide.com, and during that process, I built my own static site generator and then decided to open source it as an SEO experiment to see what sort of links we could get by open sourcing static site generator. And now it's got like 1,600 stars on GitHub, and I know that there's at least 10 very large sites running on it beyond the ones that I own. And people are really impressed with it. And it handles partial hydration, static site generation, and it really depends on how techie the crowd is, but it does a whole bunch of fancy JavaScript stuff that makes WordPress look antiquated for building static sites that you want to host cheaply and at scale. So it's fun.
Yeah.
It's funny to look back on it. I was talking to my old business partner about Elder.js and like how, it's been like a year since I released it. And I was like, I keep looking back at the code and I'm like, man, I wrote this. This is wild. Like, it's just so massively complex. And it's kind of weird because I was on another podcast and someone said, I look at Elder.js and this is what some people have done with their career, and you did it in a year. And I'm like, I know the problem inside out. And when you know the problem inside out, you can like really decide to just go all in and solve the problem. And so, yeah, that's Elder.js.
Nice. Yeah, that's actually what you said there. Like when you know the problem inside out, like it just happens like almost automatically. Like I think that's key, right? You really want to understand the problem to a very deep level, and then like everything kind of like goes around that once you understand the problem and the solution that you want to implement, right? It's super impressive that your career like did not start as a software developer.
Definitely not.
But then like now you're like, you just created a super amazing tool for building static sites.
Thanks. Yeah, and in a lot of ways, it's just I feel like when you want to do something like that, it's just you have to have the audacity to do it and think that you're like, and deal with the imposter syndrome that like, I can't believe people are going to read my code. I've never even had a code review before. I've never had someone read my code besides like my business partner and I. Like, this is scary. And then you release it and you realize no one's reading the code anyways, as long as it works.
Yeah.
and then a little bit later you realize that your competitors are the ones actually reading the code, or like the competing projects, and they're like taking the good ideas from it. And it's super flattering to see that. And it's funny. Nothing's funnier to me than in the open source community when people ask me, so like a competitor came out called Astro, and I'm super happy that it's there because it's like bringing to the forefront more of the conversation of how to build, static sites and handle hydration. And someone asked me when Astro launched if I was going to stop maintaining Elder.js because Astro launched. I'm like, I don't think you understand like why I built this. Like, I want to build interesting things with this tool. This is like scratching my own itch. This wasn't something I was doing for a business reason. So it's always fun. It's fun. It depends on what you're like competing for in life. There's many different ways to measure your life. And for me, it's like, I needed something to do during the pandemic. And in a lot of ways, I poured my heart and soul into that project. And, it does a lot of things that I'm really proud of.
Awesome. Yeah. Oh yeah. It's such a game changer. Like, and I really wish, for people, agencies, freelancers, everyone to just like stop using WordPress, because I feel like I think like it's just like a kind of like a mediocre business solution for most cases. I don't know.
Well, here's why it happens, right? So like the company I sold prior to now, it's called Broadway now, and they migrated this wonderful behemoth of a website to WordPress. They spent 2 years doing it. And I asked them, why are you going to like, this website is fully functional. You have .NET people that can maintain it. Why would you migrate it to WordPress? And their answer was because WordPress developers are interchangeable. That is the quote from the CEO. And so that it gives them some business continuity, that they believe that WordPress, and it's not true. I don't believe, and I corrected him on that. We talked about it, and he's like, for all intents and purposes, I can go hire a WordPress developer and know that they're going to know roughly these things. And I thought that was interesting, and I think that's the reason why you see that, and you also see it in the JavaScript ecosystem.
Yeah.
People want to hire React developers because they're roughly interchangeable, and it's weird to look at it that way. I think that's the reason you see it. But I agree that like if you're building something that if you can use a custom built open source tool that solves the problem that you're specifically trying to solve, you're better off than using WordPress. But if not, WordPress advanced custom fields or whatever that is, you can get a lot done with that. So like a WordPress developer is just, I can tell you straight up, different than someone that's paying attention to Svelte. Someone that's like paying attention to like a bleeding edge JavaScript framework is not the same person that learned WordPress in order to have a job. And so, I think you can't necessarily discount that, because everyone wants to work on the hot new thing.
For me, it's also like weird to see like, okay, like, so like businesses and like the people who are going to manage the site using WordPress, they have problems that they want to solve, and they think that WordPress is the solution. But what I've seen is that in most cases, they still have the same problems. It's like, oh yeah, we need a website and we want to use WordPress because we want to not depend so much on developers. But then there they are delegating everything to developers, like even like minor content changes, because WordPress is very hard to like to set up like a clean interface for content changes and stuff. I don't know, like.
Yeah, I've 100% seen it, and I've been there too. Like, and that's part of the reason why I am a developer these days, is because I often found that, especially when I didn't know WordPress inside out, I would pay people. I would spend more time, not just the money side of things. I'd spend more time trying to get done what I wanted to get done than it would have took me if I just learned how to do it. And that light clicked in my head one day, and it was probably like 2008 timeframe. I was like, I just need to learn PHP. Like, I just need to learn it, and then I'll learn WordPress, and then I'll learn a little bit of CSS, and that should be enough. And I knew a little bit of WordPress and CSS and all that at that time, but I needed to know enough that I could like know what I needed to delegate and know if someone was full of crap, to be honest, and like just knew enough in order to how to talk to developers and how to actually solve a problem like a developer would. And I would say that that's like one of the most valuable skill sets that most companies seem to be missing, is like someone that can talk marketing or talk like business logistics to like spec things out for developers. And often they rely on the developer to do that. And I think from a freelancing perspective, that's one of your highest value adds, is just be like, listen, I can talk to your normies and I can like spec it out for you. And some of the little bit of consulting that I've done over the years after I stopped my consulting business was doing exactly that. It's like, hey, I'll walk into a business, help them spec out, oh, they want to build an affiliate program, or they want to go, they want to build this product. They're getting quoted like $1 million to build the product. And I'll come in, charge like a $10,000 fee, which seems like a lot, but it's not a lot to a $1 million project, right? Yeah. And I'll help them spec it out, and they get it built for 50 grand because they didn't know how to wrap words around what they were trying to do. And so it was a huge net win for them. And it was a super easy sell for me. And it was like, a day of consulting and a couple of days of documentation of actually speccing out what needed to happen, because the company needed to build a glorified to-do list. And it was just not that difficult, but they were in New York City, and they were talking to other companies. They were in New York City, and so they're getting New York City prices. And so it's kind of fascinating how much of a disconnect there is, even if people do fall back to WordPress, because this company had been convinced that their $1 million investment was going to be built on WordPress to do a glorified to-do list. Just mind-boggling to me. And we got them a fully custom-built dashboard with multiple integrations across like scheduling times and like everything done, specced out, and bid on by multiple companies. And the highest bid was $50,000. It's just like, that's the difference between being able to talk to developers and being able to talk to businesses. If you can bridge that, there's a huge value add there. Yeah, and I think all this kind of falls under like a concept, I forget who said it, but like to be T-shaped, right? So if you know development, or you know design, or you know whatever, know a little bit about everything else that touches, because then you're able to talk across all of it. And so I often call that like T-shaped and dangerous, as I used to call it. Like when I ran my own personal brand and stuff, I was like, you need to be T-shaped and dangerous. In other words, like if you know development, you need to also know how development impacts the business so that you can talk and sell. And that's like I remember when I was like teaching people to do consulting, and like that was the easiest way to increase the amount of money you charge is to change your positioning so that you're also touching on what your services actually do for the company, like what value does it drive. And having been out of that world of teaching people that for 7 years now, it's kind of interesting because now what I actually tell, that I live in Europe now, what I tell is the number one thing you need to do is learn English, and then second, you do this positioning, because the moment you learn English, suddenly it's you can charge quite a bit different because your audience is different. And I often say that like getting your B2 level and like the Spanish level system of English is suddenly like getting the equivalent of a bachelor's degree in Europe, because it's so much easier to have context. I think understanding like how the actual business value you drive is like the easiest way to increase how much you're paid, at least like if it's a new client, because you always have that lock-in problem with prior clients, which I've never found a good solution for. And I had one thing that I used to talk about when I was teaching people to build their own freelancing businesses. I used to call it the credibility bomb. And essentially you send like everything that you've done since all the wins that you've had and like case studies that you have before, like since this person became your client, and attach that to the sort of value you can drive for the business. And that's the only way I've ever seen anyone increase their rate, like in a meaningful way with an existing client. So freelancing is a tough business. I highly recommend moving into productized consulting as soon as possible if you can. But, as always, like I think I said earlier, is like fail as many times as you can before you're 30 and take asymmetric bets. It's like bets where like at most you're losing your time, or at least you're losing your time. At most you're like getting a huge upside, and take as many of those bets as you can.
That makes a lot of sense. And like all of this is like this conversation has mainly been focused on like products and adding business value. But I also feel like there's this other space of like entertainment and art and more creative stuff. So like creating video games. I think nowadays it's just like, for example, there's this guy. His name is Steve Reese, I think, on Twitter. And he creates a little tool called TL Draw, and it's just a drawing tool. Like you can, it's in the browser, and you can just draw stuff, create circles and squares, and like add arrows and create diagrams, and it's kind of like eye candy mostly. Like if you follow his Twitter, he just uploads a lot of.
I'm familiar. I follow him too.
Oh, really? Oh, nice.
For the audience, it's not. Yeah, it's interesting. Like he like breaks down like exactly how the shapes are actually being made. Like you can actually like understand that like when you do this squiggly, you see the squiggly, but what the computer is actually doing to handle the pressure differences and all that stuff is just super fascinating. But I've also looked at it and be like, this seems like a good paid product, but I'm not sure how he's making money.
That's fascinating to me because I actually support him like for $1, because that's what you need to pay at least for like to use that app. And he called his project sponsorware, which I had never heard before. And that got my attention because it doesn't feel like it's a product that I'm paying for. It doesn't feel like it's a $1 subscription for this product. And like I don't feel like he's selling me the product. I don't feel like he's selling me a solution to a problem that I have. I feel more like he's just adding value through his creativity.
So it's kind of like a Patreon almost, right? It's like like by not like so much the platform, but like a Patreon back in the day. Like it's like I paid you to create beautiful things, and you did it. You were going to do it anyways, kind of. But at least now I get my name on it. It's a little bit of that vibe. Like he's saying, listen, I'm going to do this anyways. And like you can use this software for like sponsoring me, but I'm going to do it anyways. I think that's an interesting all of it kind of comes down to that like original idea of like 1,000 true fans, right? If you have 1,000 true
Yeah.
fans on anything, you're going to be successful. And I think when it comes down to art, it's exactly the same. And I think the NFT movement is funky. I don't have another like good adjective for it, but it's very weird. Like the fact that people are like securing digital art on the blockchain and some of it's selling for tons and tons of money. It's just weird. It's a weird concept, but I do think that there's something there that probably points to what the future of work looks like 20 years from now.
That's fascinating to me because because we all watch YouTube and we all follow people nowadays, and sometimes if we're able to, we might even support them, right? In one way or another, like financially speaking. Like maybe we buy their stuff, maybe we just like are a Patreon or something. And yeah, that just gets me thinking like what the future may look like for digital creators. Because I mean, it's already here. Like it doesn't feel like, oh yeah, like later on people are gonna be doing their own stuff and getting paid for that, because that's already our reality. But at the same time, I'm like thinking, how does that look like? Like how could education change so that that's a very valid career path that you get prepared for, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think that's an awesome question to be asking. And like the first thing that comes to mind is open source stuff, right? You know, that most developers believe they can code up anything, right? So why would I pay for this? Like I can build that in an afternoon, right? And then the moment you realize that that's not true, you suddenly are willing to pay for stuff. But
Yeah,
I think collectively we as a society need the moment to say that, like, and you're seeing it in games, right? Like people used to complain about, you know, iPhone games costing $3, and now there's like, you know, my kids are subscribed to apps that help them learn how to draw the letters. And they're $50 a year, and I don't have a problem with that because it's like educational, and I'm happy that that exists. So I think there's like we're going to see a continuation of breaking down barriers of like these sorts of careers becoming acceptable. Like I remember I have a friend that I went to college with who was one of the very first super successful Twitch streamers. And I remember he had this like identity crisis. We talked about it when he talked to his parents about that he was going to drop out of college to play video games. And just on the face of it, back in 2007 or 8, whatever, because I don't even know if it was on Twitch then, whatever it was, whatever platform it was, he was like professional playing Guitar Hero. He's like, my parents just don't believe me. And he still does it today and has a super successful life, being a video game player. Like that's like the dream. We also hear like the double-edged sword of like now he has to always be behind the camera and he's like comfortable on that. And he's got these weird haters and he's got like there's like every job has its downsides, right? So it's not all it's cracked up to be. But it's just fascinating to see how like, you know, that's 15 years, I guess. But like now, like everyone wants to be a YouTuber. Everyone wants to be a Twitch streamer. Like it's like a popular and viable way of creating of building a business. And now you've got like people want to be influencers. Like you have a whole generation of people that are, you know, like say like what are the people that are 13 years old today? What is their career opportunities going to look like?
yeah, exactly.
I think this whole influencer movement is interesting, but I think everything revolves back around to that original idea. If you have 1,000 true fans, you can literally do anything. And so that those 1,000 true fans can be into Guitar Hero. They can be into your cool project that allows you to draw squiggly lines on a screen. They can be into your NFTs. They can be into your SEO framework. They can be into anything. So I think that's kind of the answer. But how do you like teach education for that? I don't know what that looks like. I think it's just more acceptance that there are these other roles. And then like, you know, the world kind of favors the brave, the people that are willing to figure shit out as they go. And so just instill in kids that like, you know, like you can't connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them looking backwards, according to Steve Jobs. And I believe in that quite heavily.
Like my little sister, she's probably like 10 years old. And like she tells me that, yeah, I know. I'm yeah, that's what I was thinking, but I'm like, oh, well, I'm terrible with like birthdays and like like my sister asked me yesterday, like, how old are you? So like it's not only me, like it's in the family. So
It's mutual. It's mutual.
yeah. But yeah, like I see her and she's like she watches a bunch of YouTube as any other 10-year-old kid, right? And she's subscribed to specific people and influencers and stuff. And she tells me that what she wants, like she has asked me like, hey, can you help me create a YouTube channel? Like I want to create a YouTube channel. Like I want to do that. And I want to make streamings. And like I have helped her a little bit, like setting up her account and stuff. But there's like some other technical stuff that she like, I think she's like still too young. Like she just like she might be doing something, but then it's like too complicated and it's like, nah, I'm just gonna play. Like, you know,
Totally.
like not on that stage of life where like, oh yeah, I need to learn this. And of course not. She's just focused on playing.
It's like I see this with a lot of people. Like the number of people that have asked me to build a website in my career, it's like comical now. Like it's a joke. Like I just say I don't build websites. And the few times I've stumbled in that trap, the number of people that think that building a website is easy or making a business out of a website is easy, it's comical. Like it's easy up until a point, and then suddenly it's incredibly hard, and you just have to figure out it as you go. And that's like everything is like there's this point that most people stop and they drop off, and like the people that are successful are the ones that just decided to keep going. And the vast majority of stuff, especially stuff that is like a function of time, like YouTube, like if you were in there early, like, you know, let's say you were like 2000, even when you're doing it when I was doing it, like, you know, if I would have stuck with it in 2014, I would have ended up in a very different place in life, but I'm very confident that it would have been successful. I had chose between building a SEO business or continuing my YouTube stuff. And I decided to leave the YouTube thing behind and just focus on SEO because that's what I knew. And it was kind of like rolling a snowball downhill, where the other one felt like pushing a snowball. You got to keep going. When you're in the trenches, so like my wife and I have a saying, when you're in the shit, don't stand still, keep going. Because standing in shit burns. That's a reference to an old ACL, which is a concert that in Austin, Texas, that me and my business partner went to, and they used this stuff called dillo dirt that was reclaimed human sewage that is used as fertilizer. And it rained super hard before they put down all this grass, or right after they put down all this grass, right before the concert started. And so there's these famous photos of me. If you Google ACL, I think it would be like 2009 or 10 mud fest. You'll find photos of me like sliding in mud, covered head to toe in mud, and getting all sorts of like really funky infections from it. It was not good because it's essentially reclaimed sewage that we were sliding in. But don't stand still when you're standing in poop.
Yeah, that's good advice. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, this has been a ton of fun. Thank you for having me on it. Is there anything else? Sorry, I just noticed the time and I have to bounce in like 8 minutes.
Yeah, I also noticed the time, and I was gonna ask you about that too. So
yeah, I figure we could keep this going forever, like our normal calls go.
Well, thank you very much for being here.
Of course, man. It's a pleasure. It's always have fun talking with you.
Awesome. Where can people find you online?
NicholasReese.com is my website. My main project that I'm working on these days is fineenergy.com, and Elder.js is the static site generator I talked about. But I don't really tweet. I lurk more than anything, and I like kind of make pithy responses to my friends on Twitter. But Nick Reese on Twitter, but not that I'm trying to plug that too hard, because if there's one thing I've realized, I don't actually want to be famous or like an influencer. I kind of want to just live my life and do cool shit. So yeah, thanks a lot for being here, man. Awesome. Thanks for having me, dude. We'll talk soon.